Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Pause the video right now to check out my social media, my radio show, and thatdrummerguy.com. And most of all, enjoy the following presentation. Hello?
Is this Josh?
Yes, it is.
It's Chef Scott Soto calling.
Hi, how's it going?
Doing very well. And yourself?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for taking the time to do this interview.
Thanks for taking your time to be doing the interview with me.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure on my end, and it's awesome to be able to talk about your brand new solo album, Retribution, which is coming out November 10th through Frontiers Music.
Yeah.
So, how did this whole process begin with doing another solo album?
Well, it's been a few years. 2012, I think, was the last one with Frontiers, and part of it was the contractual obligation that I have to deliver within a certain amount of years. But we were actually making a plan of exactly what we're going to be doing here in the next few years, working together. And when I looked at the plan, this album would have normally been pushed for 2020, and I thought, you know what? There's way too much disaster and so much tragedy and things going on in our lives, especially this year. It's just been a horrendous year for me in loss. I said, I don't want to wait until 2020. This is an album that we kind of have in mind and what we want to do, and I'd rather push for it now and worry about 2020 when 2020 comes. And they couldn't agree more with me. We were able to squeeze it into the time frame of everything else that we have going on and in mind, and this is one of the reasons why we pushed to get it out this year.
And that makes me so happy to hear that. I mean, even though it does stem from a lot of tragedy, I mean, with it being personal and around the world and everything that's going on right now, the fact that you were able to be so busy within the last year, I mean, not only with this, with all the other projects that you've been a part of, I mean, it's awesome to see that there is some brand new music from you, and it feels so fresh and inspired. I really love what you're doing with Retribution.
I appreciate that. And, you know, it's difficult, especially, I'm going on 33 years doing this as a career, as my living, and it gets to a point where do I still have those creative juices? Do I still have something that people want to hear that's worthy of listening to, that's worthy of pushing to people? Because I have such a body of work already, and it's that easy to just walk away right into the sunset and say, I've done this, I've done that, and now I'm just going to perform this, year after year, and I'm done. But to be honest with you, I kind of fall in that category of an artist like Prince, where work to me is more freedom, it's more expression. It's not about fulfilling contractual agreements. It's not about just trying to make ends meet. Music to me is like breathing. It's like eating. I have to do it, and I have to create on the other hand as well. I just don't feel like I should just rest on my laurels, and there's still so much left in me to do out there.
Yeah, and again, that just makes me so happy to hear that, because just like you said, you have such an amazing body of work that you've already done so far. The fact that the creative juices are still flowing, the creativity is still there, and you're still so inspired to want to make new music, whether it's solo, joining up with some amazing musicians and other projects, or whatever the case is, the fact that you want to be able to do this and feel that need to do it, I mean, that is so amazing to see.
It's still fun for me. I'm like a kid in a candy store, and the fact that at this point in my life and my career that I still get that opportunity, you'd be stupid to say, well, okay, I'm done. I'll just go retire now. That doesn't make any sense to me. As long as you're still enjoying it, as long as you still have that vivacious feeling that you had when you were younger, it's what's the point in just giving up or just living out the rest of your life on things you've already done?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you do love just focusing on what you've done, absolutely, but if you still have something to say and it is still fun, just like you said, I mean, there's no reason not to keep going with it.
Absolutely.
So, with that said, with the idea of getting this album out sooner than 2020, how did you go about the writing process as far as the songs go that ended up on the album? Well,
for starters, when we agreed that we were going to push it out this year, the only person I had in mind, the first and only person I had in mind to do that with is my writing partner, Howie Simon. We worked together very well back on another album I did called Lost in the Translation that was released in 2004. And I kind of wanted to go back to that level of how we created and the level of tunes, because one of my favorite solo albums, especially the one we did together, I wanted to recreate that feeling of how and what we created on that record, and I believe we did that and then some. Howie's a great writer, number one, great guitar player, but more importantly, he kind of knows musically what I would do with something, and everything he gave me it was so easy to go in and just complete. There was nothing that I had to go in and say, I don't know about this. Maybe you can change that chord or move that and cut and paste and chop and blah, blah, blah. Everything he gave me was like, dude, that's perfect. I know exactly what to do over this. I know what I want to do over this, and there was no mincing around. It was just an easy, great process working with Howie, and that's kind of why I wanted to get him involved in this.
Yeah, and it definitely worked out for the best, too. I mean, like I said before, I mean, it does feel so fresh and inspired this time around, and the fact that it was such an easy process. I mean, being able to find someone that you are able to work so closely with and really understand each other when it comes into the songwriting and production and everything else that goes into making an album. I mean, when you have the right people behind you making an album, it makes everything so much easier.
Absolutely. And I think the important thing on this record is there's a continuity. My last few solo records, they've been pretty much established with other writers, other guitar players, other musicians. It's kind of a melting pot of people that I wanted to work with and people I thought I could make some really cool music with. And those were great albums as well. But on this one, I kind of wanted it to sound like a beginning and an end, as opposed to like just a mix stew of different things that kind of make up who I am. This sounds more like a band album or more like a partnership on the songwriting department than my other solo albums have sounded.
Yeah, and I definitely noticed that the more that I'm able to sit down and really divulge with the album. I mean, it starts off so heavy with Retribution and so beautifully and melodically with Autumn and everything in between there. I mean, it feels so cohesive together, and it does have that great album feel to it, which is something I really appreciate.
Oh yeah, and it's tougher and tougher when you write songs that you're really close to, especially in the old days when you would format and sequence an album. It would always be, well, there was a different way of doing it when it was on vinyl, and you had to flip the album over. You had a different way of formatting and sequencing. But when CDs came out, and you had one long-form version of listening to an album from soup to nuts, there was a sequencing that came about. Okay, the stronger songs are going to be at the top, the weaker ones will be at the end, and therefore you at least make sure that if the listener you don't want to lose them by giving them something important at the end of the album. So you put all the strongest songs up top. But I try not to think about that in the sense of, well, why would you even put a weak song on the record? Why are you going to put some fillers in there? Why not make them all strong? And that way it gives you it makes it more difficult to actually put the album format together. And that's how I look at things. So I try not to think about, well, a song like Breakout or a song like Autumn should have been more at the top because I think it's a stronger song. I like to bookend first the album from Retribution to Autumn. To me, it was like a beginning and an end, and then everything in the middle kind of tells a story.
Yeah, and I appreciate that so much because whenever I get to check out a new album, I want to be able to check it out from start to finish and see how everything flows together. And to me, it's like I never understood the point of trying to put out filler music out there, because it would be so much easier to just make like an EP, wanting to put out a few good songs and then other songs that you don't care about. So when someone actually does go through and puts out a completely solid album worth of material, that I always appreciate that so much more.
And this is a message to all you people out there that like to shuffle. Don't shuffle an album. There's a reason why those songs are in that order. Listen to them in the order.
I couldn't agree more. And with that said, what have you heard as far as the reception for the new songs and the new album so far?
Well, so far the reception's been great, and luckily people they understand what I'm actually doing with these solo records. They realize I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm filling the perspective and the expectation of what they want out of me. But on my end, I'm dabbling and doing things that keep it a little more fresh and more modern than just trying to do the same old, same old. And to me, that's important because you can't win either way. You have an audience going to you saying, "Oh, well, it sounds like the same old stuff. He's just recycling the same old stuff." And then if you try something new, they say, "Oh, this is too experimental. I'd rather hear them doing what I expect out of them." So you can't really win with a lot of people, but you got got to try to find a balance that keeps them happy that you're giving them what they expect out of you, but you're also able to flex your wings a little bit.
Yeah, without question. I mean, if you're just in it just to make the crowds happy and you're making music that you're not inspired by, eventually that's going to come through in the actual recordings and the live shows and everything like that. So when you are able to find that right balance, when the fan base will really appreciate what you're going for and you can be happy with the music that you're making as well, that makes all the difference.
Absolutely.
So with that, with the album coming out November 10th, how much promotion as far as live shows are you going to be able to do for this album?
At the moment, there are no live shows planned because I've got this new band, Sons of Apollo, and I didn't realize that when I was giving up the year of 2018 for the band for a lot of things that are being planned, that we're actually going to use a lot of it. So at this point, I'm not accepting or looking for anything to add more to my life because at some point I'm going to need a breather based on what's going on with that band. And if it turns out that I'm wrong and there are pockets that I can fill in, of course I'd love to go out there and do some dates on this album.
Oh yeah, and I was going to bring up Sons of Apollo as well, but it's just like a few years back I was able to see you at Prog Power and you were able to do such a great set of being able to show off a great retrospective of what you'd done up to that point. So if you are able to like fit in anything before or during or after Sons of Apollo to be able to promote the new album and get out there and play some great solo material again, I really hope it happens because I would love to see what these songs are capable of hearing live.
Well, absolutely, and I've spoken about it with Howie and who we would get for the lineup and piecing this together to put it on the road. But at this point, it is a bit dormant, and if anything, the awareness that's going to come from Sons of Apollo might actually help me be able to do the solo thing in a grander scope. So, I'm playing it by ear, and let's just see how it all pans out.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, just like I mentioned before, I mean, with Sons of Apollo, I've just got to be able to check that out this weekend as well with listening to your new solo album. I've been listening to them back and forth, and I really love what you're able to separate yourself between both bands. I mean, when you're focusing on your solo material, I mean, it doesn't sound like Sons of Apollo and vice versa. Was that a challenge for you when it goes into doing different projects around the same time like this?
No, I can find it. There's an easy way to separate them, and that's part of that is not doing them simultaneously. I literally didn't start doing anything with the Retribution album until the very last note was sung and done with Sons of Apollo because I didn't want to put my mind frame and mindset into the JSS thing while I was still under that kind of prog umbrella, and vice versa. I thought to keep the separation, let's just concentrate on one at a time. I don't like bouncing back and forth to different things. And the same thing, I had just after the JSS album, I had to do a new W.e.t. album, another project of Frontiers, literally the day after I was done with Retribution. So, but before I told everybody in between, everybody involved, I'm not going to dive into both things at the same time. I got to finish one so I can clear my mind of that and go into the next one, with a clean slate.
Oh, wow, and I didn't even realize that there was going to be another W.e.t. album coming out. I mean, the fact that you are able to work on all this and be able to separate between each band and stuff like that, I mean, that takes a lot of effort to be able to separate everything like that, even though it involves, like, the time frame and everything, but the fact that you are able to do that, I mean, it really shows a lot of what you're capable of.
Well, it's to me, music is breathing. It's like eating and walking. It's just such a natural thing. It's not, I don't look at it as having to wake up early and go to work and have to, to me, it's not work. It's part of my being. It's part of my DNA. So, yeah, of course, the work end of it is making sure it's quality and not just quantity. But on the other hand, I don't look at it as like, oh, geez, how am I going to come up with this? I mean, I just did 3 albums back to back to back. I mean, you imagine the amount of material and creativity that comes in just doing one album or even an EP, and to do 3 in a row, it just flowed out of me. All the different ideas and the different melodies and lyrics. I was able to come up I was able to go to so many different places to come up with the topics and the themes for them.
Although, with that said, I mean, it's got to be a nice feeling to be able to go to the other end of the spectrum and be able to promote the songs live. I mean, with Sons of Apollo, I mean, I can imagine that you guys are just building up a lot of shows that are going to be coming up with that. So it's nice to have that change of pace rather than just being in the studio, being able to tour around the world again.
Absolutely, and it truly will be a world tour. Normally with my solo tours, I'm pretty much limited to Europe and South America, but Sons of Apollo is going to open up a worldwide awareness to my life and career, and as I said, this can only benefit the long scope of what I'm doing for my solo records.
And with that, I mean, there's been a lot of people that have been talking about the Sons of Apollo album, and, you know, just like everyone that's involved. How does it feel to be a part of a project like this?
Well, I'm in heaven. I mean, when you look at the firepower and the ammunition that we have in this band, when Mike Portnoy called me and asked me to be a part of it, without even hearing one note before he could finish his sentence, I said yes. It's a bit of a bucket list of mine to do an album with Mike and also do an album with Billy, but to do an album with them together on the same record, are you kidding me? I didn't care if they just wanted me to sing one note on it. I wanted to say yes to this album. I'm sorry, to this band, and this particular album, the songs that we created together. And the fact that I can say I created with them, it's just another level of this. I'm just so stoked to be there.
Yeah, and that's what I really appreciate about the album, too. I mean, with a lot of bands of, like, the caliber of this band, like, sometimes there can be some uninspired music that really goes along with it, but I don't hear that in Sons of Apollo. I mean, it sounds like a group of guys that are just having so much fun together, writing some music that they've always wanted to make together, and with the final product, I mean, I can just imagine with the live show, I mean, it's just going to be one great time to be able to hear these songs live.
It is. It's going to be quite the undertaking to pull this stuff off live, to say the least. And I got to be honest, you know, and it's so overwhelming to think the level of the people that I'm with in this band. You start to question yourself, like, do I belong here? Do I really? Am I supposed to be here? And then, in the end, when you hear the piece of music that we've created together, the answer is a resounding yes. And I realize my involvement is just as important as Mike's or Derek's or Bumblefoot's or Billy's. So it truly is. It's something that we are extremely proud of, and I can't wait to get it out there. I'm just so glad it's finally out. It was one of the hardest things to contain, as far as when initially they said, don't talk about it to anybody, don't make sure the media doesn't know about it, all the way to having the album in my hands and wanting to play it for everybody. And they said, please don't share this. It was like, oh God, now finally the world can hear it.
And it's funny because back last year, I did an interview with Mike, and he alluded to the fact that he had a new project for this year, and I was so curious to see what it was all about. And then finally, when everything came out about Sons of Apollo and I saw the lineup and everything, I just got so excited about it because everyone is such a master of what they're doing on this album, and you can definitely tell when you listen to the album from an outside view. Again, like I said, it's a group of guys just having fun together, writing some great music, and which I know will lead, hopefully, to a great success as far as future albums and shows and everything like that, because I really love the direction that you guys are going in.
Appreciate it. And Mike said it recently in an interview. He feels that we've transcended beyond just the prog level, the prog label, rather. I couldn't agree more with him, because we have so many classic rock and metal and other even modern influences in the stuff that it's not just a prog band. I think we've kind of created our own vibe, and some people are going to say it sounds like Dream Theater. I've been reading and hearing a lot of people say it sounds like Symphony X, and I got to be honest with you, not to knock any of these bands. I've never heard one Symphony X song in my life, and I only know one Dream Theater song. So everything that I'm doing with the band is from a completely different perspective, and I'm not trying to sound like Dream Theater or trying to sound like Symphony X or anybody else. I'm just doing what I would do for this music and for this band. And for better or worse, it's going to sound the way it sounds, and that's what we're aiming for. It has to sound like Sons of Apollo.
Yeah, and I was going to ask about that too. I mean, with the direction of how you wanted to go vocally with this album, and the fact that you were just able to do it without knowing so much of like the Dream Theater or Symphony X or any of the prog metal styles of that caliber. The fact that you just went in with what you think fits with the band, I think was definitely the right approach.
Right on. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
So with that said, I know everything's being lined up with that for 2018 and with the world tour and everything. In these early stages, what would you tell people to expect from a Sons of Apollo live show?
You know what? It's your guess and mine. At this point, it's because we haven't even gotten to that point yet. I really don't know what to expect yet. It's going to be, obviously, I'm sure we're going to play everything on the record and then some, but that then some is yet to be seen until we actually get together. It's too early to discuss that, and I'm sure that topic's going to come up in the next couple months. But I honestly really don't know. I just know it's going to be an incredible show, however it's going to be formatted, and I can't wait to see exactly what we're going to do. It's going to be so much fun.
Yeah, and regardless of what the set list is going to be, I mean, I at least can say that from everyone that's involved, I mean, it's going to be a great show with a great bunch of musicians that are being able to show off some high caliber music, and I think that's something to really look forward to.
Right. Oh, yeah, we're all excited about it. We really are.
Yeah, and one last thing I wanted to mention, since you did bring it up earlier, was there was going to be a new W.e.t. album. Is there anything that you can talk about as far as that?
Sure. I mean, I just finished it. I just got back from Sweden 3 days ago, shooting videos for the album, because I leave in a week and a half for a Trans-Siberian Orchestra, so this is the only pocket of time that I could get out to meeting with the guys and getting these videos knocked out, because, again, 2018 is going to be packed, and I want to try to squeeze and fit last-minute things in, so we knocked the album out. I went out there and we literally did knocked out the videos. I believe the album's coming out late February, if not early March, something like that. And don't quote me on it, but that's what's been discussed. And yeah, the new W.e.t. album is another killer. It's another killer, no filler. Great album.
Oh, awesome. And that makes me excited to hear that, because I absolutely love what you do with W.e.t. So the fact that I could learn something from this interview, the fact that there is going to be a new W.e.t. album coming out in 2018, that makes me very excited.
Absolutely.
Oh, well, awesome. Well, Jeff, thank you so very much for taking the time to me to talk not only your brand new solo album, Retribution, which is coming out November 10th through Frontiers, but being able to divulge a little bit more into Sons of Apollo, finding out that there's a new album from W.e.t., and everything that you got going on in 2018. I mean, let alone this year with, like you mentioned, with all the Trans-Siberian Orchestra touring that's going to be coming out as well. I mean, the fact that you were able to fit me into the schedule to be able to just talk and be able to promote this stuff, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Well, my schedule's not for the weary, but it's just been again a blessed career, a blessed year, and there's a lot more coming.
Oh, well, awesome. Before we wrap things up here, is there anything else you'd like to mention that I hadn't brought up yet?
I sure hope not. If there's more, then I really might need to get checked into a hospital at this point.